tonight. Mr. Bishop, if you turn off these lights here, we probably can see a little bit better the track lighting. We'll get it. You got the All right, and we're gonna pray at the end. We'll pray at the end of the service. No. It's connected with this. We'll pray at the end of the service, but I don't want y'all to listen to this message here.
He was born before, when he was in the womb, that he was known of God. Now listen to Isaiah chapter number 1. Brother Vernon read it this morning. I had not intended to use it, but I cannot avoid it after he read it. Verse number 17 of chapter 1, Isaiah says, learn to do well. These are people that have been born. That's us. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow. In those statements, in that verse, the Lord is telling the people of Israel, and in fact, He is judging the people of Israel because they have mistreated the most vulnerable among them. The most helpless in their society, they have ignored. Not only have they ignored, but they have abused them. Today in the United States of America, we have not only ignored, but as a nation, we have abused the most helpless among us. Even now in Canada, some of you may have seen that in the last several months, Canada has begun treating those who are unwell, who may have a need for what used to be a major surgery. Now, in one case, I saw a letter a number of weeks ago where a lady who needed a knee replacement was denied her knee replacement by the government-ran insurance, but they were willing to help her with assisted suicide. We look at that and we are horrified, and we ought to be horrified at the way the most helpless and most vulnerable among us are treated. But there is no one more helpless or more vulnerable than the unborn. Inside the mother's womb ought to be the safest place on this planet. In Exodus chapter 21, God even made provision to ensure that the child in the womb was given the same equal rights of a human being who was alive. The Bible tells about two men struggling, and it says that if two men struggle, and it causes somehow another, I don't know if anybody's ever seen this or not, but there are some women who are very defensive of their man. And I would say thank God for that, I guess. But some of you who have been around fights may have seen at times a woman get in between two men fighting. It happens. And sometimes, God forbid, but it does. The Bible talks about if a woman is somehow in the midst of a struggle, injured in her womb, in her stomach, and it causes the baby no harm, but maybe she goes into early delivery. There is a consequence for that happening. But the Bible also says that if something like that happens and there's an injury that causes that baby to be born dead, that the person who caused that injury is to suffer the same punishment as if they had killed another living adult. They're to be executed via capital punishment. That is not where I'm headed today. I simply give you that to explain to you what God thinks of a human in the womb. Now, oftentimes, you don't hear the word baby, child, infant used in the womb. Planned Parenthood has learned to not use that type of language. And so they have learned to use the word fetus. It's all about a fetus. Does anyone here speak Latin? My son does. Nathan, would you be so kind as to tell us what fetus means in Latin? It means a small child. And so no matter how you speak about it, that's a small child in the womb. Let's be very clear this morning. If you take notes, you might want to just close up. I don't know that I'll give you any sort of an outline to write down or to be pretty with today. If you want to come up and look at it after the service, I'd be more than fine showing it to you, but I just don't think you're going to get a lot to write down today. On June the 24th of last year, of 2022, the Supreme Court of the United States released a ruling that it was the Dobbs ruling that overturned both Roe and Casey. Roe, going back to 1973, almost 50 years, had been the de facto law of the land, although no law had ever been passed making abortion a legal right in the United States. But by the edict of the Supreme Court in 1973, a bunch of men who made it legal for many, many years. When the Dobbs ruling was handed down on June the 24th of last year, we were on our way home from Foothills Fellowship Camp. We were eagerly listening and watching in the car, refreshing SCOTUS blog, waiting because we thought that this could be the day, and it was that day. And on that day, everyone who was on the side of life began to rejoice, but folks, many have a misunderstanding that ended the abortion argument. It did not end it. In fact, it took the one big abortion argument and it divided it up, and now there are 50 abortion arguments. Because abortion, although no longer a legal right federally, is now a constitutional right at the state level, if the states choose to make it so. So it's a state issue. Every state is free now to form their own laws and regulations as it relates to the preservation of life or the taking of a life in the womb. As a matter of fact, this last November, during the last election cycle, the state of Montana had a ballot initiative open to every resident. So just as they voted for their congressmen and their senators, just as they voted for their local officials, they had a ballot initiative, a statewide referendum that asked this question: if a baby is born alive as a result of a botched abortion, must medical professionals be forced to provide life-saving care to that born baby? And overwhelmingly, by a majority, in 60-something% of the residents of the state of Montana said no. That if a baby is born alive as a result of a botched abortion, and that baby is laying on a table or laying next, born and laid out in the open air, they do not provide care to that child and they let it die. Just a number of weeks ago, a similar bill was presented and voted on. A vote was forced on a bill in the United States Congress. And not only did a vast majority of Democrats vote to do the exact same thing, but a number of Republicans crossed the aisle and likewise voted no to not offer life-saving care to a baby born alive as the result of a botched abortion. Several states, because it is now a state issue, several states have passed heartbeat bills or outright bans on abortion. There are 7 states right now that have at least a heartbeat bill ban, which means that at the time that a baby's heartbeat is detected, that baby is no longer able to be legally aborted. That happens somewhere around the 6-week mark. Texas in March of 2021 began to pass a bill, or began the process of running a bill, submitting a bill, and filing it, and going through committee and coming out. And in May of 2021, that's 2 years ago, they passed 2 bills. Number one, they passed a heartbeat bill. And that heartbeat bill did just as I said, that any time that once a heartbeat is detected, abortion is no longer a viable act upon that human being. And that is the core, that is the case that led to the Dobbs ruling that overturned Roe versus Wade and Casey. Those are the 2 major abortion cases that solidified and codified it as United States de facto law. When in June 24th of 2022, last year, the day that bill passed, abortions were now under the restriction in the state of Texas of a heartbeat bill, of a heartbeat ban. In June, up until June the 24th of 2022, in fact, for the entire month of June, in Texas alone, there were 2,596 abortions in the state of Texas in 1 month. That heartbeat bill goes into effect on June the 24th. For the entire month of July, there were only 68 abortions in the entire state of Texas. 68 is too many. But that is a 97% reduction in the number of abortions. Let me rephrase that. That is a 97% rescue rate of babies being murdered by medical professionals who have taken a Hippocratic oath, but have now turned it into a hypocritic oath. A 97%. Now, since 30 days after that ban went into effect, in June the 24th of 2022, when we get into August in Texas, they had a trigger ban. They passed it in May of 2021 as well, but it could not go into effect until 30 days after June the 24th of 2022. And when it went into effect, the last numbers that we have for the month of September in the state of Texas is that there were 3 abortions in all of the great state of Texas. It's 3 too many. But let's focus on the 97% reduction that was achieved by a heartbeat bill. Let's talk about California. California did not pass a heartbeat bill. California did not pass any sort of restrictions on abortion. In fact, after June the 24th, Governor Newsom came out and he made a statement and began to plaster billboards all across the state and in other states like Nevada and in Arizona and even over into Texas, began to pay for billboards that said, "Flee to California. We want to be an abortion sanctuary." Some of you may be familiar with Dr. John MacArthur, the pastor of Grace Community Church out there, who wrote a scathing letter, public letter, that was published in many newspapers and was greatly publicized, that he called out Governor Newsom for his depraved statement, desiring people to come and to flock to California to kill their children. Why do I tell you about California? Because even though Governor Cooper did not do what Governor Newsom in California did, North Carolina has become an abortion sanctuary for the southern United States. It has become what is now known, a new phrase has been coined. It is an abortion tourist destination. North Carolina has become the leading abortion tourist destination in the southern United States, south of Maryland since June the 24th of last year. North Carolina has some anti-abortion laws. We have a 20-week ban. Brother, may I ask how far along is your wife? How many weeks? She's due when? April what? April 20th. Somebody do some math for me. Somebody do some math for me, please. If you're able, do some math and tell me about how many weeks she is at. She's at 30 weeks. Remember that. She's at 30 weeks. I'm going to come back to that in just a moment. North Carolina has a 20-week ban. If Taylor wished to, if she wished to, she could get in her car and drive to a number of states along the I-95 corridor and at 30 weeks have an abortion. There are certain states where she may even able to, up until the time of delivery, abort that baby. Now, thank God that's not her desire. Planned Parenthood has been known to tell women, and has for the last many years, that babies cannot feel pain until the 28-week mark. At 28 weeks, a baby begins to, but there's only one problem with that. Studies have shown that it's not 28 weeks, but it's around the 12-week mark that a baby can begin to feel pain. Don't forget that statistic. Between 2005 and today, on average, every year, North Carolina aborts between 28,000 and 35,000 babies a year. That's not women in North Carolina going to other states. That's the number of abortions that take place in North Carolina alone. Do you understand what I'm telling you? A population around the size of Asheboro is eradicated through abortion every single year in our state. Can you imagine that? It makes what Hitler did in the Holocaust look like nothing. And what Hitler did in the Holocaust was atrocious. We look at that and we are disgusted, sickened. We need to feel the same about what goes on in North Carolina. We're not talking about California. We're talking about what goes on Randleman Road in Greensboro. We're talking about what goes on in Charlotte, in Asheville, in Raleigh, in Winston. We're talking, listen to this. We're talking about what goes on. You don't have to go to those places to have an abortion. Do you know why? We have this thing called the abortion pill. And you can simply go to the pharmacy. And if the pharmacist is willing to prescribe it, and in almost every case they are, you can simply go home and take a number of pills which causes the body to stop the blood flow to the baby that has been attached to the inside of the mother and causes the body to self-abort. I said between 2005 and today, North Carolina has between 28,000 and 35,000 abortions each year. North Carolina has become a tourism destination with some of the most lax abortion restrictions in the entire southern United States, according to NC Policy Watch. As of August of last year, in Asheville, at the Planned Parenthood in Asheville, the number of total abortions that they do, this past August, 74% of the abortions they did were people coming from out of state. 1 year prior, it was around 30%. What's going on? People are flocking to North Carolina as an abortion tourist destination. In Charlotte, at the Planned Parenthood in Charlotte, over 52% of the abortions in the same month of August last year were from people from out of state, where in the year prior it was only 14%. What is going on? North Carolina did not plaster billboards like California did, but from South Carolina and Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama and Mississippi, they are flocking to North Carolina to safely, not for the baby, but legally, to kill their unborn children. What can we do? One day after the Dobbs ruling on June the 25th last year, Speaker Moore made this statement: North Carolinians can expect pro-life protections to be a top priority of the legislature when we return to our normal legislative session in January. It's February. See, North Carolina's got a lot of good things going on. We really do. North Carolina has a very vocal pro-life voice in our legislature and across our entire state government. We've got many good things going for us. We've got the most vocal lieutenant governor in the history of all lieutenant governors. We have a conservative majority on the North Carolina Supreme Court, which is an amazing feat that we have worked so hard to accomplish. But we've got obstacles as well. We've got a grossly liberal governor in Roy Cooper, who has political ambitions greater than that of the governor's mansion, and we have an attorney general at the state level who is extremely liberal and makes Governor Cooper look like a conservative. And he's known for not defending the laws and constitution of North Carolina. And so it comes down to the North Carolina legislature, which is made up of a significant Republican majority. And this is not about Republicans and Democrats, but there are problems. And the problem with that is this: not all Republicans share the same stance on pro-life. And while there's a Republican majority, the Republicans are just, listen to this, one vote shy of a 72-number supermajority needed to override a veto. That means they can pass a bill, but the governor will absolutely veto it, so that means that it comes back and they try to override the veto. But in order to do that, we need 72 votes in the North Carolina House, and we need 30 votes in the North Carolina Senate. We have the number of votes in the Senate if every Republican in the state Senate votes for it. But listen carefully what I'm about to tell you. North Carolina may have a supermajority of Republicans in the state Senate, but not every state Republican senator has the guts to support pro-life legislation to the extent that it needs to be supported. I love mine to death. I have a great deal of affinity and affection for our state senator, Dave Craven. He needs some tender, loving encouragement to stand on this issue. In order for any pro-life legislation to pass and override the governor's veto, we have to have Democrats come over and cross the aisle, or nothing's going to happen. You see, North Carolina is not a red state like Texas. It is not a red state like Georgia or Alabama or Mississippi or even Tennessee, or even South Carolina. What is North Carolina? North Carolina is what's called a purple state. How many of you know what I'm talking about? It's a purple state. In a purple state, an absolute total ban on abortion is simply unachievable at this current time. Why? Because elections have consequences, and we're just not there yet. Here's what I would tell you. If in the last fall, if anybody in here lives in that northeastern part of Randolph County or in the northwestern section of Chatham County, we were trying our best to get a gentleman, a good wonderful, godly gentleman elected in that area? And if so, we would have had the number of votes needed to override a governor's veto and pass a total ban, potentially. But that didn't happen. And the gentleman that won that race is absolutely not going to support a total ban or any other pro-life legislation. So what can we do? Well, many pro-life advocates are just like I am. We are what are called abortion abolitionists. I pray that's what you are, that we want the total eradication of abortion across the entire world. But we've got to fight in North Carolina first. So do we submit a total abortion bill, even though that's actually what we want, and it's ultimately what we want, and that is the most just and the most right and the most righteous thing to do? Well, if we do, nothing's going to pass. And so all we do is we wait until the next election and we try again, and we wait until the next election after that and try again. Does anybody remember the fact or aware of the fact that it's only until very recently that North Carolina's even had a majority Republican legislature? And again, I don't care if you're Republican or Democrat, I'm talking about life this morning. And only one side has a platform that is pro-life. The other side does not. So again, I don't care what your politics are, and I'm not advocating for Republicans or Democrats. We have Republicans right now in the North Carolina legislature that will not support pro-life legislation. They say they will in public, but when it comes to the backroom conversations, they will not. They do not have the guts, they do not have the fortitude to stand up and do what they said that they stand for. And so I say to you this, I am an abortion abolitionist. I want the total eradication of abortion, but I'm willing to accept that we may have to achieve that in multiple steps. Just like in a football game. As soon as you get the ball, you don't necessarily throw a Hail Mary and pray that somebody catches it in the end zone. No, you fight and you claw and you scratch for every inch of ground you can get. You get a first down and you move the chains and you do it again. And then you get another first down and you move the chains and you do it again. And you do not stop fighting. At times, you even have to punt. But you punt and you play defense. For what? To get good ground position, good field position, so you can do it all again. And you fight and you fight and you fight until you finally are able to gain ground by scoring. And I'm afraid that that is how we must fight this fight as well. I want you to think of it this way. I want you to consider a burning building with people inside. And here's the thought. Do you refuse to save anybody on the inside because you may not be able to save them all? No, absolutely not. We would do everything we could do to save as many as we can, knowing very well that we may not be able to save everyone. And so that's what I'm asking you to do today. I'm asking as a pastor. I'm asking as your friend. I'm appealing to your heart. I'm appealing to your conscience. I'm appealing to your reason and your sensibility. As much as we want a total ban, it's not a reality. I'll tell you what's going on. This Tuesday and Wednesday are days of action in Raleigh. Many of us are going to Raleigh on Tuesday and Wednesday to walk the halls of the North Carolina legislature. We are going to wear baby blue t-shirts or baby blue shirts of some sort. And we're going to walk the aisles, the hallways, and speak to the Republican leaders and the Democrat committee leaders and beg them to support pro-life legislation. You see, they want to water down change. Have your calculator ready. Approximately 35,000 babies are going to be murdered in North Carolina this year. With our current 20-week ban, approximately 35,000 babies will die of abortion in North Carolina this year. They want to take that to a 16 or at best maybe a 13-week ban. A 12-week ban, if we were to get a 12-week ban, that stops only 13% of abortions in the state. How many babies does that say? 35,000. What's 13% of 35,000? What? 4,550. Is that better than zero? Yes, it is. But if we're able to pass a heartbeat bill, it will save 86% estimated of 35,000 babies. Out of 35,000 babies, that saves if we can save 30,000 out of 35,000, it's not enough, but it's better than zero. And it's a whole lot better than 4,500. And so I'm asking my brothers and my sisters that in the same way we would rush into a burning building knowing we may not be able to save everybody, to save as many as we can, because what are we trying to do? Are we not trying to save as many lives as we can from the fires of the altar of Molech? I say let's save as many as we can. So I'm almost done. I say, as many others do, tomorrow, Franklin Graham, tomorrow, Steve Noble, I was able to be on his radio program, approximately 40 stations yesterday, on Friday. I was able to be on his program. I was invited to come on and speak about this issue. And we talked about this need, and we're asking people to do things. Let me explain to you the seriousness of it, though. We're asking the North Carolina General Assembly, Republicans, and we cannot do it without Democrats as well, to pass a heartbeat bill with a veto-proof majority and save approximately 30,000 lives over the course of 1 year. It's not enough, but if we can move the chains, let's move the chains and then fight with all of our might to save the rest. Talk's cheap. Talk is cheap. They're going to file a bill this week. We don't know which bill it's going to be. 13-week, 12-week, 16-week heartbeat bill. What do we have the votes to do right now? None of them. We don't have the votes to pass the governor's veto for even a 16-week bill, to cut it by 4%. We don't have that. But we believe we're close. We believe we're so close. And we only need a few. But here's what happened. North Carolina's filed heartbeat bills before. North Carolina legislatures. In fact, in 2021, 2 years ago, January the 28th, 2021, of the 21-22 session, there was a bill filed. It was called HB 31. That was an abortion heartbeat bill, just like what we're talking about. On January the 28th, it was filed. On February the 1st, just a few days later, it was sent to committee. And do you know what happened to it? It withered on the vine, and it died in committee. That bill alone had 4 primary sponsors, and it had 17 co-sponsors. I can tell you the names of every one of them if you wish to hear them. 4 sponsors, 17 co-sponsors. We needed 72 people to vote for it, and they buried it in committee. Who buried it in committee? Republican leadership. Republican leadership. The Democrats never got a chance to vote against it because Republican leadership didn't have the guts to do what they said they stand for. So here's what we're asking you to do. We, being me, and many other pastors across North Carolina, are preaching on this subject this morning. I said tomorrow Franklin Graham will be doing a video for us. Steve Noble will be doing a video for us. Governor Kemp of Georgia, by the grace of God, will, I pray he will encourage others to support us in our efforts. I pray he will support us in our efforts. I pray others will as well. But I'm praying that you will. So I'm asking you to do 3 things. Number 1, this week, beginning today, I want you to make fervent prayer for your North Carolina legislators. In our area, there are 3 primary in this area that impact, that cover most of us, I would say. From a state senator perspective, most of us, our state senator is Dave Craven. I love Dave. Dave is a great guy. I think the world of him. Dave needs some encouragement and some prayer. And let's be clear, it's hard to be bold. It really is. It's hard to be bold. Brian Biggs. Brian Biggs is bold. Brian Biggs has no filter. Brian Biggs will tell them all exactly what's on his mind, and he has. And he's made it perfectly clear where he stands. Neil Jackson in District 78 has made it perfectly clear where he stands. I'm asking you to do three things. Number one, to pray for our legislators. Number two, to connect. That's actually to reach out in one of two ways. There's two ways to do it. I'm actually asking you to do it the latter. Number one, you can send an email. You can send an email. Emails are better than nothing. But even better yet, what I would ask you to do is to make a phone call. You can go to the website for the North Carolina legislature and you can look up your representative. I'll give you their office numbers. I'll give you their email number or email addresses. I have them for all three of those men. I can get them for anybody else if you live somewhere else. Got some people. Your guys will be a little different. I can give you that. If there's anybody else, I can give you what you need. But I'm asking you to connect with them, preferably via a phone call. We want to bombard them. Be nice. Be respectful. Be Christian. But let them know that we mean business. That we want a heartbeat bill. And that we're willing to take action. And if they will not, then we'll find somebody to run in their place that will. So we're asking you to pray. We're asking you to connect. But the third thing that we're asking to do is the same thing that we've gotten, hopefully, Franklin Graham to do, hopefully some others to do tomorrow, is to go on social media. Raise your hand if you have social media of any kind. I know we're all ashamed of it, but we do. I see it. You see it. Every one of you that has social media, I would humbly, prayerfully ask that you take that phone out, open the camera app on it, turn it to video, hit the record button. You don't have to have a speech, but simply say, my name is, and I am praying for our North Carolina legislatures to boldly pass a heartbeat bill in North Carolina and save as many as 30,000 babies a year. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever. Post it. And when you see others, share it. Comment on it. Why? Because it makes a difference. It makes a difference. It makes a difference. You say, preacher, I've never done anything like that. Well, let me ask one more thing of you. If you are willing, and I'll be clear, this is a case where I'd rather have women than men. I'd rather have young people than grown men. If you can go with us on Wednesday to Raleigh and just walk the hallways with us, and let's go see our North Carolina legislators. If you can walk with us into Speaker Moore's office, the office of others, and encourage them to support pro-life legislation, meaningful pro-life legislation. Because if we don't, and it doesn't matter how many people are willing to vote for it, if our Republican leadership, again, I don't care what your affiliation is, if the Republican leadership is not willing to support it, you know what's going to happen to it? The same thing that happened to HB 31, and you never heard of it. Did anybody even know that existed? No. You know why? Because Republican leadership didn't want you to know that it existed. You know what else they don't want you to know existed? The 35,000 babies that are murdered in North Carolina because of abortion every year. So here's what I want us to do. It's 12:03. If you are willing to at least do that first step and pray, brothers, you come to the piano. As he comes to the piano, I pray you get a burden. I've shared my heart with you. I've tried to do it in such a way that I didn't squall and bawl today. I know it's been long. It may have been dry. But I give you numbers today, real numbers. And there's days we shout over the good things of God, but if 30,000 doesn't do something to your heartstrings, then something ain't right. Friends, I'm asking.
Brian Biggs is District 70. He's a Republican. And Neil Jackson, District 78, he's a Republican. Robert Reeves is the second. He's a Democrat. He's in District 54. That's our House members. In their Senate, the Senate members are David Craven Jr. He's in District 29. He's a Republican. Amy Gailey, she's a Republican from District 25. I say those names just to, and you can go and look at them. That's the North Carolina General Assembly website, and that's for Randolph County, to pray for them. You talked about praying for them. And if you're willing to do this, to go on there on social media and make a short post tomorrow, and just let them know that it's a hard number, ain't it? When you think about it, it's a hard number. Just stomach that. 35,000 babies are going to be more murdered in North Carolina. Murdered. Why are we not outraged by that? I'm guilty. We're so busy, caught up in everything. You're willing to go in there and say, I'm praying for NC legislators to pass a heartbeat bill. That's what we're asking for, a heartbeat bill. Then if you're able to go on Wednesday, my schedule will allow me to, but I can. I'm going to text Dr. Burris and ask him about their plans for times and everything after the service tonight, and see what they're planning on, where they're gathering at, and all this. I'll gather up that information for you and have that as soon as he gets back with me. So if you're interested in any of that information, just send me a text. But we want to pray tonight. We'll come and pray. We want to thank North Carolina's old conservative state. No, it's not. No, we're one of the most liberal states in the South. You realize that? I dare to say we're probably more heavily populated with churches probably than anybody in the South. Wouldn't you? Literally every corner we can drive around as a church, right? Though he didn't mention it here, but he also reported that there was an NC Baptist, not NC, North High Point Baptist pastor, and actually took a young lady to the abortion clinic to have an abortion. Yeah, that's in our churches. Yeah. Very confused, ain't we, about what the Word of God says, ain't we? Yeah, Satan's deceived a lot of people. And I just want to ask you tonight, we're just going to gather around the altar together, and we're going to plead. We talked about that word plead with the Lord this morning? Yeah.